It's another Football Friday on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman. Joining me are our columnists, Berry Tramel and Jenni Carlson, OSU beat writer Gina, Mizell, and OU beat writer Jason Kersey. We'll get to their locales here in a second, but we're going to jump in right away talking about next week. Guys, this week has a little bit of a blah feeling to it. Kansas coming into Norman, Iowa State coming into Oklahoma State, so I want to start with Notre Dame. And let's start with Jason. Jason, can you put into perspective how big a game this OU Notre Dame game might be next week?
It's going to be huge. I think it's clearly the biggest non-conference game of the Stoops era. With a team like that coming here, you add all the history in, the fact that Notre Dame has not been to Norman in decades, the fact that it's two of the better programs in the history of college football, the Notre Dame breaking OU's 47-game winning streak in the 50s. There's just all kinds of great history. And then you add on to that it's just two really good football teams that could be ranked pretty high by the time we get to this game next week. But both teams have to take care of business this week first.
Barry, nobody knows the history of OU and Notre Dame better than you. But beyond history, what does this game mean?
Well, I mean, it's a huge game on the national landscape. I think game day will be here, provided Brigham Young or Kansas don't pull big upsets. I think the Sooners have a chance to get back into the BCS discussion in a big-time way, maybe land as high as the top 5 going into November. So that's not a bad place to be. It's a good way to wipe out even more the loss to Kansas State. You know, I mean, it's all the talk about, you know, we heard a lot of talk in September, this season's over, play for next year. All that stuff seems silly now, and you beat Notre Dame, and it's even more silly and shows that this could be a very special year for the Sooners.
Jenni, we've budgeted a bunch of stories around the game, stuff about what happens when Notre Dame comes to town. We've got a story we're working on about a priest in Oklahoma who was the altar server for Notre Dame before the game in '57, all kinds of stuff. And then on Twitter today, I see somebody offering to trade 4 Bedlam tickets for 4 Notre Dame tickets next week. Is that a good deal? If you're the one, would you trade 4 Bedlam tickets for 4 Notre Dame tickets?
Well, that's a pretty interesting question. I think knowing the immediacy and the impact that this game could have, I think you probably do make that trade. I mean, when you get to Bedlam, who knows where that game is going to rank in importance. But we can pretty much rest assured that when that game kicks off next week, it's going to have a huge impact on the national championship picture. Notre Dame's coming in looking like they're as good as they've been in a long time. And obviously Oklahoma needs some help. They need K-State to lose if they truly want to be in the consideration for a BCS Bowl for a chance to win the Big 12. But, yeah, I mean, I think right now the importance of this game is huge.
Let's take a look at the game in front of us for just 1 second, OU, Kansas, and let's start with Berry. Berry, what could foul up this what possibly could the Sooners do or not do on Saturday to spoil the OU Notre Dame matchup? What could get them beat?
I don't think anything. I don't know that it's physically possible. Now, up in the South Bend, Notre Dame's offense doesn't score enough to make automatic victory against Brigham Young, which is really good on defense. I mean, that could be a 6-3 game. But I can't fathom. You know, if Landry Jones plays against Kansas the way he played against Kansas State, and the rest of the team just plays average, OU will win 35-7. So I can't, you know, I guess, you know, maybe a catastrophic injury or two. You know, if Blake Bell had to play the whole game at quarterback and stinks, I guess maybe. But I just can't see it. Kansas is not a Big 12 caliber team. They've won 1 game this year, and that was over South Dakota State. So I don't think it's going to happen on the Sooners' end.
So, Jason, going into that kind of scenario, a game the Sooners, on paper, it doesn't seem to be a fathomable way they could lose. What is this game about, the OU Kansas game?
Well, I think it's it's just another game to make some small improvements. Although they looked pretty good against Texas, I think they would all love to get right into the Notre Dame game. But I think it's a game to make some improvements, to work on some things, to maybe try some things out, and then also to get some younger guys some playing time and some game experience in the second half, and maybe even see Blake Bell throw the ball around a little bit in the second half.
Jenny, you have the distinct pleasure, the unique distinction of getting to cover a Kansas football game on back-to-back weeks.
Oh, the joy.
You've done it before.
I have.
What do I owe you? What is this going to cost me?
Let's see. I think some sort of off week at some point in my life, but it's not coming. Well, I mean, it's this week for the Sooners, and it kind of was last week for the Cowboys. But yeah, this is a bad football team, a program that's in bad shape just all the way around. Hasn't been nearly as good as when Mark Mangino was there. I thought Jason's story this morning was really fantastic and chronicling, just how good Kansas was not too long ago. Went to the Orange Bowl. Represented the Big 12 in that game. It was just a fantastic year, and now really a team in disarray and still struggling to find its footing. Maybe it happens under Charlie Weiss. I don't know. His last foray into head coaching, not very good at Notre Dame. But, obviously they've got a long ways to go to get competitive in the Big 12. Really the one team in my mind in the Big 12 that is a for sure win for the rest of the teams in this conference. You can't say that about any of the other 8 games on anybody's schedule. Iowa State isn't a for sure. Baylor isn't a for sure. You really don't see that against anybody else but Kansas at this point. So wouldn't it be great if someday you could say every team in the Big 12 could beat every other team? We're not there, though, and Kansas is the one team that you can't say that with.
We seem to be pretty close, which is a far cry from the old days of OU Texas and the 10 Dwarfs. By the way, about that scheduling, you getting back-to-back Kansas games, remind me, what's the name of that music festival you go to in Austin during football season every year?
I didn't go this year, though, so maybe that's the trade-off.
Yeah, that is a trade-off. I think you'll be asking for that one next year, and you'll say, hey, remember those 2 back-to-back Kansas games?
There you go. I'm going to write that down.
Okay, let's talk about something that everybody in the state of Oklahoma wants to talk about. Let's talk about something that Jason was ridiculed 2 weeks ago for writing about. We were ridiculed for putting on the cover of the Sports Monday section, and that is even putting OU and BCS title game in the same sentence.
Is that headline why it looks like he's been taken hostage?
Jason, somebody asked us before this started whether you had been captured by the Tulsa World and forced to read a statement. Do you have that statement now? We need to get this out of the way.
No, I guess I just picked a bad place to sit in my apartment.
There's some disappointment also from your palatial apartment down in Norman, Oklahoma, that you haven't shared any art with us in a couple weeks. Have you run out? Or is
I ran out.
Time for another trip to Hobby Lobby?
That's right.
Let's talk about OU and the BCS title hunt. Are we wasting breath and or ink on this topic, or do you see a plausible way the Sooners could get in it? Do they deserve to be in it in the conversation?
I'm sorry, who was asked?
That's you, Jason. You're in the big picture.
Okay, all right.
Follow along.
Yeah, I think they are in the picture, and I think they especially are after that Texas game. Yeah, you're right. I wrote that a couple of weeks ago, and it was, I got a lot of angry emails about it from a lot of people saying that it was crazy that I would even say that. But the truth is, now that they've beaten Texas the way that they did, they're in the top 10 of the BCS, and the schedule that they have in front of them puts them in a pretty decent position to work their way back up, especially when you consider that there are still SEC teams in front of them that have to play each other. Oregon and Oregon State still have to play each other. And so, of course, I think that they can get back in it. Now, I'm not saying that they will, but they could, sure.
Okay, now on to a more intense. Barry, I'm talking to you now. Just want to make sure everybody understands it's now Barry. Barry, you were one of those people who scoffed at our cover, Sports Monday. I heard you on the radio, scoffing. Do you scoff now?
Too early. It was too early.
How about now? By the way, something's going on here. Barry.
It's 2 weeks later. So, yeah, OU's in the BCS discussion, but they're still far back. They got all kinds of things that have to happen that's out of their control, starting with Saturday night in Morgantown. If Kansas State wins Saturday, it's going to be very difficult for any Big 12 team other than the Wildcats to win the conference title, because the Cats will have won at Norman and at Morgantown, and they only have 2 road games left, and one of them's at Baylor. So the Sooners need some help, not just on the national front. They need some help on the conference front. And if you don't win your conference, it's going to be very difficult to make the argument that you belong in the BCS title game. So the Sooners very well could win out, but they're going to still need a lot of help.
Jenni, do the Sooners have enough big games to climb left? Do they have enough matchups, marquee matchups, to pull themselves up from the bottom of the top 10 in the BCS?
Well, I think obviously, if some of these teams that they've played already could continue to win, if Tech continues to win like they did against West Virginia, that helps you on the reverse of that question. But clearly, having already played Texas, having already played Kansas State and lost to the Wildcats, that doesn't help. But at the same time, those are earlier in the season losses. If you lose to K-State late in the season, then you really have no chance. But losing to K-State early, we've seen how some of those early losses can maybe be mitigated by what you do late in the season. Clearly, that game against West Virginia, at West Virginia, at the end of the year, that becomes the game. The Sooners need West Virginia to continue to win. The worst thing that could happen is if they just go into free fall or something, and that game becomes against a 3 or 4 loss team. I don't think that's going to happen, but obviously you lose to K-State. If you keep losing, that's no good for the Sooners and their hopes down the stretch.
One more OU question, and then we'll bring Gina Mizell into the conversation, talk about Oklahoma State, Iowa State. You're watching the Football Friday Hangout on News OK Live. And our next question, which we'll start with Jason. That's Jason down there. There you go. We're starting with Jason on this one. This is one of Barry's favorite topics from time to time. Who's the team's best player? So I asked you, Jason, we've seen the Sooners through a quarter of their schedule, or a third of their schedule now. Who's the best player on the team?
I think the best player on the team right now is Aaron Colvin, the cornerback. He's made some really big athletic plays. He's done great job in coverage. A couple of the times that he's gotten the passes have been caught on him, they've just been great catches. He's been had the receivers really well covered. That interception he had at Texas Tech when he was blitzing and jumped up was an incredibly athletic play. So I think Aaron Colvin is the team's best player right now, and I think Damian Williams is making a strong case that he belongs in the discussion as well.
Jenni, Colvin Island is now being put onto T-shirts. It's a playoff of Revis Island. The New York Jets cornerback Darrelle Revis, that's become a legend in the NFL. Probably one of the best shutdown corners in the league. Now Colvin's getting that. But when this season started, didn't we think it would probably come from the likes of Tony Jefferson or Landry Jones? And are you siding with Jason on his pick of Aaron Colvin?
I'd probably go Tony Jefferson over Aaron Colvin, but there's no doubt what Aaron Colvin's done has been big, and especially in that secondary that was so targeted before the year. Everybody wanted to see how much better could these guys play. But I definitely think Tony Jefferson has become sort of a rock which the Oklahoma defense revolves around. He's really solid in everything he does. I know his tackle numbers are up, and part of that's because those tackles tend to be a little bit more funneled to him and other guys than we've seen in the past. But I love the way Tony Jefferson's playing, and I don't think you can overlook Damian Williams either. What he's done in his early in his OU career, definitely fantastic. But I think I would probably give the nod to Tony Jefferson. Really stellar play from the Sooner safety.
Berry, no love for Trey Millard. Who do you got?
I was going to say, I think Bob Stoops would vote for our friend from Columbia, Missouri, Trey Millard. I would probably go with Colvin. 2 weeks ago, I said Tony Jefferson. I'd probably switch my vote to Colvin now, but I think Bob Stoops has the electoral votes to swing the election, and I think they're going to carry with Trey Millard. And frankly, the way he played Saturday, a guy that'll block a middle linebacker in the teeth and then jump over a safety en route to a 73-yard play is hard to argue with.
Where does that?
And he's always fresh because he's so seldom used.
Yeah. Barry, where does that performance by Trey Millard sort of rank in OU Texas lore? I mean, is that going into the Holy of Holies?
It's pretty high up there because think about it. I mean, one of the most famous pictures, ironically, Joe Washington jumping over a Jayhawk back in 74, 75. But that's Joe Washington. I mean, this is a bull snorting fullback who jumped over a Longhorn, and while he was in the air, he forearmed another Longhorn to the ground. So it was a heck of a play. I think we need a new name for Trey Millard. If Roy Williams is Superman off his play, then Trey Millard is the Incredible Hulk or somebody. It was really something.
The photograph that we had on the cover of the Sunday Sports section, was it the second time he leaped somebody? He did it twice in the same game. We didn't even have the one where he jumped the guy and crushed another guy on the same run. That's all for this edition of the Football Friday Hangout on News OK Live. You can stay with the best coverage team every day in the Oklahoman and all the time on newsok.com.